Stella Rae grew up behind the glass, seen but never chosen, heard but never believed. In a city that rewards the loud and forgets the quiet, she was just another shadow in someone else's spotlight, until a forced move into a stranger's apartment sets off a chain of revelations, betrayals, and a truth she never saw coming. The man she was told to live with isn't just a quiet coder from Queens. He's a billionaire hiding from the empire he built, and he's been watching her brilliance bloom in silence. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the maternity wing of Brooklyn Community Hospital, casting a pale, tired glow over a hallway lined with chipped walls and rolling supply carts. At the end of the corridor, behind a half-shut curtain, a young woman lay still. Her chest no longer moved. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, damp with sweat and the shadow of death. A nurse adjusted the four that no longer dripped, biting her lip as she looked toward the clock. 2:14 a.m. A baby's cry split the silence. Raw, demanding, alive. Wrapped in a worn hospital-issued blanket, the newborn flailed tiny limbs in protest as the nurse handed her gently to the social worker standing awkwardly at the edge of the room. The woman looked to be in her late 40s, tired-eyed, dressed in business casual that had seen too many cases and not enough weekends. No ID, no emergency contact, the nurse muttered. No one's claimed her. Not a single visitor. Jane Doe for now, the social worker replied. We'll start the paperwork. What about the father? The woman gave a half shrug, shifting the sleeping baby against her chest. If he exists, he's not answering the phone. The hallway echoed as she walked out with the child in her arms, into the sterile glow and down the corridor where another night nurse held open a clipboard. The form read, Temporary Foster Placement Request. The city system was backed up. Overloaded. No infant home available. Not on this side of town. She took out her phone and made a call. Carol? Yeah, it's Dana from CPS. Look, I know it's late. I need a placement, infant. Born about an hour ago. Mother passed during labor. No ID. A pause. I know you already have one. This is just for the weekend. Maybe a few days, tops. We're trying to place her. Another pause. Then, I'll bring her by. The apartment in Crown Heights was 2 floors up, at the top of a rust-colored walk-up with peeling paint on the banister. Carol Rivera answered the door in a navy blue robe, her thick gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She didn't say a word, just stepped aside and let the woman in. Tasha, age 3, peeked out from the hallway, dragging a stuffed flamingo by the neck. Her big eyes blinked at the bundle in the social worker's arms. Carol nodded to the couch. Put her down, she said. The baby was fast asleep now, mouth open slightly, fists relaxed. Her cheeks were a soft red from crying. The tag on the hospital blanket read, Do not remove from room. She has no name yet, Dana said. I figured you could. Stella, Carol interrupted. That's fine. Dana hesitated. Stella Rivera? No, just Stella. No need to add things she'll have to erase later. She stood over the child like a looming question mark. No tenderness, no judgment, just a decision made and done. Dana handed over a folder with temporary custody papers, whispered a tired thank you, and left. The door clicked shut. Carol walked to the kitchen without looking back. Tasha stood in the hallway, watching the baby. Is she staying? She asked. For now, Carol replied, pulling a bottle of water from the fridge. She's got nowhere else. Tasha tiptoed closer, peering over the couch. The baby let out a hiccup in her sleep. Her fingers curled near her cheek like a reflex. Tasha tilted her head. She's kind of funny looking. They all are when they first come out, Carol muttered, sipping. Now go back to bed. The baby stayed. Weeks turned to months. Months into years. But the arrangement never changed in Carol's mind. Stella was not daughter. Not blood. Not truly theirs. Just a child that happened to live under the same roof. Carol never held her unless she had to. She fed her, bathed her, vaccinated her. But she did not soothe her when she cried at night. She let her cry it out. Stella learned early not to make too much noise. Learned to reach for the bottle on her own. Learned that silence was safety. By the time Stella turned 5, she understood the layout of the apartment like muscle memory. The cabinet creaked near the hinge. The hot water pipe hissed before the heat kicked in. Tasha's door had a glittery H taped to it, and Stella was not allowed past the threshold. Stella's bed was in the storage room, just big enough for a twin mattress and a plastic bin of old toys. Her blankets were soft from wear, and sometimes at night, she traced the cracks in the ceiling like constellations. She never saw a photo of her birth mother. She never asked. She learned not to. By the time Stella turned 17, she could navigate the entire city without a GPS. She knew which subway exits let you out closest to the crosswalk, which bodegas overcharged for coffee, and which ones threw in a bagel if you smiled. She walked fast, shoulders hunched slightly inward, headphones in but never playing anything. The streets of Brooklyn were loud enough, sirens, sidewalk chatter, the occasional catcall from a passing car. But Stella had learned how to move through it like vapor. Her life had a rhythm. Mornings started at 5:45 with a silent alarm on her prepaid Android. She boiled water in the dented kettle, packed Tasha's lunch first, then her own. Peanut butter on white bread and a bruised apple most days. Carol never asked what she ate. She never needed to. Tasha didn't wake up until the sun hit the sheer curtains in her room. She'd shuffle out in pajama shorts, yawning, scrolling her phone. Her private school uniform was crisp and starched, complete with a navy blazer and a gold-trimmed crest over her heart. Her Metro card was fully loaded. Her carpool arrived at 7:30 sharp. Stella's school-issued ID hung from a fraying lanyard. Her uniform didn't match perfectly. Her skirt had been hemmed too short and then lengthened with awkward stitching. The blazer was missing a button. She wore sneakers instead of flats. Nobody at Brooklyn Central High noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. She boarded the C train at Kingston Throop and rode past 8 stops. In the mornings, she sat in the far corner of the car, earbuds in, head down. She studied. She watched. She didn't speak. Tasha took an Uber home from Whitmore Academy if the carpool ran late. Her school had ivy-covered walls and a glass atrium library. Their student union cafe had oat milk lattes. On her Instagram, Tasha posted boomerangs of latte art and posed in bathrooms lined with gold-trimmed mirrors. The caption always included hashtags like #bossbabe and #WhitmoreGirl. Stella followed her, but never liked the photos. Watching them was enough. The apartment remained split, like it had always been, but now the lines were sharper. Cleaner. Carol treated them with cold efficiency. Tasha had curfews, but Stella had rules. Tasha was allowed to host sleepovers. Stella was told to stay out of the living room after 7 p.m. Carol paid for Tasha's violin lessons, her eyebrow threading, her extracurriculars. Stella once asked to join the photography club at school and was handed a broom. "You can't afford distractions," Carol said. "You need to earn your keep." Stella said nothing. She was tired of saying things that echoed in empty rooms. One Friday evening, Tasha was getting ready for a gala hosted by her school's board of trustees. She stood in front of the full-length mirror in their shared hallway, adjusting a sleek emerald dress with a deep neckline and gold heels. Her curls were pinned back, her earrings sparkled in the soft yellow light of the bathroom. "Zip me?" she asked. Stella stood nearby, folding laundry. She put down the towel in her hand, walked over, and pulled the zipper slowly up Tasha's back. The dress hugged her like it had been tailored by stars. Tasha looked at herself and smiled. "They'll probably seat us next to Ryan tonight." Stella paused. "Ryan? Cooper?" Tasha turned to her, one brow raised. "Yes, Ryan Cooper. You've seen him on my feed. I think I passed him once. In the hallway at your school. He's cute, right?" Stella nodded faintly. "He smiled at me." Tasha's reflection stopped moving. The pause was only a few seconds, but it was heavy. Something flickered in her eyes, then vanished beneath mascara and gloss. "Well, don't get any ideas," she said, reaching for her clutch. "He's not into quiet girls." Stella stepped back without replying. Tasha left with the click of heels on tile. The apartment door slammed shut like punctuation. That night, Stella stayed up cleaning. Not because she was asked, but because she needed to move. Scrubbing gave her something to control. She cleaned the kitchen counter until it shone, wiped fingerprints from the microwave, and swept the hallway where Tasha had spritzed perfume before leaving. She opened the window to let the air breathe. From their fifth-floor apartment, she could see half the neighborhood. Lights from the bodega across the street, headlights bouncing off parked cars, windows flickering with TV shows and quiet dinners. The city didn't sleep, it just blinked slower. She looked at her reflection in the window glass. Her hoodie was worn, her hair tied back with a rubber band. No makeup, no earrings. Her eyes looked larger at night, framed by the city's fractured light. She raised her hand and touched the glass. Not to reach for something, just to feel what separated her from everything else. It wasn't that she wanted Tasha's life. It was that Tasha was allowed to want, and Stella was just allowed to exist. It started with a look. One Saturday morning, Tasha dragged Stella along to volunteer at a charity brunch hosted by Whitmore Academy's Parents' Council. Not because she wanted help, but because Carol insisted. "It'll be good for your record," she'd said, passing Stella a stack of folded aprons. "And stay in the back." So Stella stayed in the back, refilling coffee carafes, ferrying bagels, sweeping crumbs from white tablecloths while women in blazers with pearl earrings gossiped about startup investments and ballet recitals. She was used to being invisible in places like this, places that smelled like money and curated furniture. But then Ryan Cooper walked in. He was tall, sharply dressed in a slim-fit navy suit, and had that kind of effortless posture only rich boys mastered, relaxed, like the whole room bent around him. He gave Tasha a kiss on the cheek. Cameras snapped. She angled her body just enough to show off the thigh-high slit in her dress. Stella didn't look directly at him. She was busy arranging orange slices on a platter. But she noticed him noticing her. A flicker of his gaze. A pause. She didn't flinch. Later, when she passed by with a tray of champagne flutes, he caught her eye again. This time he smiled. Just slightly, just enough. Stella looked away. The room was full of chatter and curated charm, but she could feel the weight of that glance like it had landed in her palm. Tasha noticed too. The messages started 2 days later. At Ryan.Cooper. "Hey, I think we met at the fundraiser. You were doing like 5 jobs at once, lol." Stella stared at the message for 5 minutes before responding. At Stella_Rae. "I remember. I was doing 6, actually." She didn't flirt. She didn't need to. Ryan replied within seconds. It became a thing, memes, music recs, the occasional "you'd like this book" text. He never brought up Tasha. Stella never asked. But sometimes she wondered why he reached out. Wondered what he saw in her, the girl in the background. It wasn't long before Tasha noticed. She always knew how to read people, especially people who used their phones more than their eyes. And Ryan had changed. His comments on her photos were shorter now. Less flirty. Less frequent. One night, she opened his following list and found Stella's name. Tasha didn't say anything that night. The next morning, Stella's phone was gone. "I'm tired of you walking around like you're one of us," Carol said flatly, standing in the hallway with her arms crossed. "We give you a roof, food, education. And now you're acting like you're owed more." Stella didn't answer. She stared at the empty kitchen table. "You're drawing attention, and it's the wrong kind. Ryan is not your type of people. You know that. He's part of Tasha's world. Not yours." Stella's mouth opened, but nothing came out. What would she say? That she didn't mean to be noticed? That she hadn't asked for it? Carol mistook the silence for guilt. "You're not going to ruin what Tasha's built." "I didn't ruin anything," Stella said softly. Carol's eyes narrowed. "Don't talk back. You're not a victim here. You're lucky to be here at all." That night, Stella found her phone on the kitchen counter, wiped clean. Every message, every photo, every trace. The following Monday, Tasha posted a photo with Ryan, one of those staged candids, where he was mid-laugh and she was turned toward him, glowing under golden hour light. Caption: My kind of weekend #Whitmore girl #city love. Stella looked at the screen once. Twice. Then shut it off. At school, something changed. Boys who had never spoken to Stella were now smiling when she passed by. One even offered to carry her books. Another held the door open with an awkward half-nod. It wasn't the dress, hers were still thrifted. It wasn't makeup, she didn't wear any. But it was in her stillness. The way she carried silence like it was intentional. People assumed mystery when a girl didn't chase attention. They assigned her stories. And the stories worked in her favor. Tasha began watching her closer now. Little things, how Stella spoke in class, how the teachers praised her writing, how boys looked at her like she was a riddle worth solving. Tasha hated riddles. She liked being the answer. One night, Carol hosted a dinner for some co-workers, other school administrators, and the local superintendent. Tasha came downstairs in a soft pink blouse and gold hoop earrings. Stella was asked to serve. Midway through dessert, one of the guests, a man in his 30s with slicked back hair and a lazy smile, turned to Carol. You didn't mention you had 2 daughters. Carol didn't even look up. I don't. The room laughed. Stella stood still, holding the tray of fruit tarts, her knuckles white around the edges. Tasha looked over, and for a moment her eyes softened, but only for a moment. After everyone left, Carol didn't apologize. She never did. Later that night, Stella opened her laptop, logged into her school account, and applied for a free online coding program. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't need approval. She watched the loading screen flicker, then disappear into a dashboard of lessons and modules. She was tired of waiting for someone to give her worth. She was ready to make it. It started with an envelope. One morning in late October, Carol came home from work early, unusual on its own. She dropped her coat on the back of the dining chair and sat at the kitchen table with a silence that felt staged. Tasha wasn't home yet. Stella was pulling laundry from the dryer, still warm and soft-smelling, when Carol called her in. Sit. Stella did. Carol slid the envelope across the table like it was a court summons. No expression. No preamble. Inside were 2 things: a printed apartment lease with Stella's name on it and a one-way Metro card. She stared at the papers. What is this? You're going to live with someone. His name is Jack Morales. Friend of a friend. Solid man. Doesn't drink. Works in tech. Needs a roommate. You'll have your own room. He's willing to help with rent in exchange for some help around the house. Cleaning, cooking. Light work. Nothing inappropriate. Stella blinked, stunned. Carol leaned back, arms crossed. This is an opportunity, not a punishment. I didn't ask for this. Carol's mouth twitched. You didn't have to. I'm giving you a way to move forward. A stable home. You're 18 in 6 months. You need to start learning how the real world works. I go to school. You can still go. The apartment's in Astoria. 40 minutes by train. You'll manage. But I live here. Carol gave a short laugh. No, sweetheart. You stay here. You live in your own head. Jack Morales was not what Stella expected. When she met him, he opened the door in a faded flannel shirt and socks with holes in them. He looked tired but kind. Soft-spoken. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. His brown eyes didn't scan her the way other men's did. He didn't seem interested in her at all. Just distant. Gracious. A little too formal, like someone raised by people who demanded manners but never gave affection. This is your room, he said, leading her down a long hallway in the old brownstone. It locks from the inside. Wi-Fi passwords taped to the router. Kitchen's yours. I don't really cook. Stella stood in the doorway of a clean, quiet bedroom with a view of a rusting fire escape and the Q train in the distance. Jack scratched the back of his neck. Just a heads up, I work weird hours. Mostly nights. I'm rarely here. You'll have your space. Okay, Stella said softly. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Jack turned to leave, then stopped. You don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. Just let me know if you need anything. Then he was gone. Her first night in the apartment was strange. Not bad. Just too quiet. No Tasha yelling at FaceTime. No Carol's heels clicking down the hallway. No chore list taped to the fridge. She sat on the bed and looked around at the unfamiliar room. It had clean sheets. A small desk. A shelf with 3 dusty books someone had forgotten to unpack. It didn't feel like hers. But it also didn't feel like someone else's. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. Instead, she unpacked. Not much, just a backpack, a duffel, and a secondhand laptop with cracked edges. She placed her books on the desk. Aligned her pens. Plugged in her charger. Small things. Things she could control. That night, she made herself an omelet and ate it alone in the kitchen. Jack came home at midnight, nodding politely as he passed her room. No questions. No judgment. She liked that. Weeks passed like this. Jack stayed in his office, fingers tapping on a mechanical keyboard late into the night. Stella cleaned without being asked. Cooked small meals. Took the trash out. Not out of duty, but habit. The rhythm of a caretaker lived in her bones now. But here, no one was measuring her worth by it. School became her escape. She joined a coding workshop through her online class. Started submitting mini-projects. Nothing big, just a budgeting app, a homework tracker, a clean, responsive website mock-up. But she liked it, liked seeing her ideas become real. She told no one, not even Jack. But one night, he noticed her sitting on the couch, debugging a snippet of JavaScript. Back-end or front-end? He asked casually. She looked up. Front-end. Just playing around. He nodded. You code clean. Stella blinked. You read my screen. You were using the console window wrong, he said, grinning faintly. No offense. She laughed, a quiet, startled thing. It was the first time she'd laughed in that apartment. Jack shrugged. I work in development too. I can help if you want. Stella nodded, unsure. But something cracked open inside her. A month later, Carol called. How are things? She asked, voice clipped. Fine. Good. Just checking. Tasha has a new internship. Social media manager for a fashion house. Stella leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the flickering fluorescent light above. Tell her I said congrats. She doesn't care if you say it. Stella hung up. That night, she sat on the rooftop of the brownstone, legs crossed, hoodie zipped to her chin. The skyline shimmered across the river. Queens behind her. Manhattan ahead. A train rumbled somewhere below. She had no idea where this was all going. But for once, she felt like she had stepped outside the cage. And she wasn't planning to go back. The apartment had its own rhythm, different from the one Stella grew up with. It didn't shout. It didn't watch. It didn't wait for her to misstep. It breathed. The brownstone in Astoria wasn't fancy. The stairs creaked, the windows stuck in the corners when it rained, and the water heater had a passive-aggressive hum that never quite turned off. But it was quiet, and for the first time in her life, that didn't mean punishment. It meant peace. Mornings began with sunlight through slanted blinds and the smell of strong coffee from the kitchen. Jack always made too much, left the extra in a thermos labeled, "Drink this if you're human," with a cartoon ghost drawn in Sharpie. Stella would laugh barely, then sip it while reviewing her coding coursework. The apartment slowly became hers in invisible ways. A mason jar of dried lavender she picked up at a flea market appeared on the windowsill. A yellow sticky note with a reminder to breathe got taped to her mirror. A set of Polaroids from her disposable camera, subway graffiti, a pigeon mid-flight, an old man playing chess, were clipped to a string above her desk. She didn't even realize she was making a home until one day she looked around and saw the absence of Carol's voice. It felt like a room where she could finally become. Jack remained a mystery. He worked in his home office with the door slightly open. Stella never saw much, just the blue glow of multiple monitors, charts, code, emails. Sometimes he talked on Zoom in a different voice, more assertive, like he was someone else at work. But outside that room, he was soft-spoken and dry-humored, with a tendency to over-explain things like router configurations or how he organizes files alphabetically by feeling. They didn't speak much, but when they did, it mattered. One night, Jack walked into the kitchen while she was plating stir-fry. "You okay with mushrooms?" she asked. He gave her a surprised look. "I'm okay with you cooking. I haven't had a vegetable since I moved in." She grinned. "You own a cast-iron skillet." You can't be that helpless. I bought it for the aesthetic. It makes me look like I know what I'm doing. They sat at the table, quiet for a while, eating. Then Jack said, "You're not what I expected." Stella paused mid-bite. "What did you expect?" He considered that. "Someone messier. Someone louder. And what am I?" Jack looked at her. "Efficient. Quiet. Thoughtful. But also kind of terrifying." She raised a brow. "You carry silence like a knife," he added. "People notice that." Stella wasn't sure whether to be flattered or afraid. Late one Saturday, she stayed up finishing a UX design challenge. She worked in the living room, curled up on the couch with 3 tabs open, her sketchbook resting on her thigh. The city hummed outside the window, distant sirens, occasional laughter, the soft buzz of nightlife just out of reach. Jack passed by with a blanket and tossed it over her legs. She looked up. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," he said. "That's why I gave it to you." He walked away without another word. A few days later, Stella found the locked door at the end of the hallway slightly ajar. She hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside was a small room, dimly lit. Dusty shelves lined the walls. Stacks of old notebooks. Framed newspaper articles. And on one side, a sleek glass desk with a single monitor glowing quietly. On the far wall hung a photograph of 2 men shaking hands on a TEDx stage. Jack was one of them. The headline read, "The face behind your favorite app." She stepped closer. On the desk was an old plaque, partially covered with papers. Jacob Morales, co-founder, Cinco's. Her breath caught. Cinco's was a billion-dollar software company. Their AI-powered scheduling algorithm was used by schools, hospitals, Fortune 500 companies. She remembered seeing a story about them on TechCrunch. She remembered Ryan Cooper posting a selfie with the CTO on LinkedIn. Stella's stomach flipped. Jack wasn't a quiet developer from Queens. Jack was rich, and he had never told her. That night, she waited for him in the kitchen. He came in, dropped his keys, poured water, and looked up. "I found your office." He didn't flinch. "I figured you would. You created Cinco's?" "I co-created it," he said. "Then I left." "Why?" Jack leaned on the counter. "My co-founder tried to push me out. Long story. He won. I sold my stake quietly. Signed NDAs. Took the money. Built something else. And now I freelance. Do back-end for boring companies. Avoid attention. Keep the lights on." Stella folded her arms. "So you're a billionaire hiding in a rent-controlled brownstone?" He chuckled. "No, not anymore. I gave most of it away." "Why would you do that?" He met her eyes. "Because power makes people cruel. I didn't want to become one of them." Stella's voice dropped. "And what am I? A social experiment?" Jack shook his head. "You're the only honest person I've met in years." Silence settled between them. Dense. Complicated. Then Stella said quietly, "You should have told me." Jack nodded. "You're right." He didn't apologize. But he looked at her like someone who understood he'd just crossed a line, and didn't want to lose the ground they'd built together. That night, Stella stood by the window and looked out over the skyline. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass. She didn't know what to feel. Anger? Gratitude? Suspicion? All of it tangled like wires. But beneath it all, one thing was clear. She wasn't a guest anymore. She was part of something, even if she didn't know what it was becoming. The apartment felt different after that night. Jack was still Jack, quiet, courteous, always 2 steps away, but the air between them buzzed now, filled with a new tension. Not romantic. Not hostile. Just charged. Like Stella had opened a door neither of them could close. She started noticing things. The heavy safe tucked beneath the desk in Jack's office. The art on the walls that wasn't just decorative. It was original, hand-signed, limited prints that should have hung in galleries, not above an IKEA couch. The books on the shelf, titles in philosophy, systems design, behavioral economics. Some were dog-eared and highlighted. Others pristine. Some in other languages. Jack was quiet, but his life shouted, once you knew how to hear it. 1 week after the discovery, Stella's laptop crashed. Dead. Black screen. A soft whine when she pressed the power button. She was 2 days away from submitting her UI capstone for the online course she'd been working on for 3 months. She panicked. Jack wasn't home. After 20 minutes of troubleshooting, she walked to his office door. It was unlocked. She hesitated, then stepped inside. His laptop sat open on the desk, screen glowing unlocked. A Chrome browser was up, tabs arranged neatly. GitHub, Stack Overflow, Notion, Gmail, a spreadsheet titled Q4 Projection Breakdown. Stella stared for a second. Then she sat down and opened Google Docs, uploaded her design folder, and started working. It was harmless. Temporary. She'd get in and out. But then she clicked the wrong tab. And paused. The screen showed a back-end dashboard she didn't recognize. Sleek, secure, unbranded. It looked like a startup's admin console. Lines of code scrolled along the side. Clean. Elegant. Annotated with comments written in Jack's unmistakable voice. Build 2.4.2 pushed. Stella's UX recommendation implemented. Live NAV bar now adaptive. Change log. User flow, simplified login. Stella's idea for mockups. She froze. He hadn't just read her work. He'd been using it. She clicked into the About tab on the site. It was a prototype for an app that was gaining quiet traction in the productivity space. Low-key featured on Product Hunt. Already getting investor inquiries. And it was using her designs. Her name was nowhere. Her contributions invisible. She scrolled back to the Git log. Every UX commit was attributed to Jack. Every design improvement she had made in conversation. Every solution she'd offered without realizing it. Now under his alias. Her breath caught. She shut the laptop and stood up, pulse pounding in her ears. Jack came home at midnight as usual. Stella was waiting on the couch, sitting perfectly still. No TV. No music. Just waiting. When he stepped inside, he paused. Saw her face. And knew. You went into my office. I used your laptop, she said quietly. Mine died. I didn't expect to find my work. Jack didn't speak. Tell me you were going to give me credit, Stella whispered. He stopped, adjusted. I am. I was waiting for the right time. I wanted to make sure the prototype would work. That the idea was viable. You mean my idea? Jack sat down slowly. Stella, I didn't steal it. I refined it. Her eyes flashed. No, you repackaged it. It wasn't personal. Stella's jaw clenched. That's the problem. Nothing about me is ever personal to anyone. I'm convenient. I'm quiet. I'm invisible. You thought I wouldn't notice. Jack's voice dropped. I saw you. I've always seen you. She shook her head. No. You saw what you could use. A long silence settled between them. Jack folded his hands. You were never a project to me. But I became one. His voice cracked a little. You walked into this house carrying silence like armor. I thought if I gave you space, you'd feel safe. I didn't realize you'd feel stolen from. You didn't realize, she echoed. That's always the excuse, isn't it? He looked away. I'm sorry, he said. And this time it wasn't defensive. It landed soft. Real. But Stella didn't move. She felt the edge of her own fury. It wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It just cut clean and exact. I want you to delete the project. Jack inhaled sharply. I want it gone, she said. You don't get to succeed off of me. Not like that. He looked at her for a long moment, calculating, but not cruel. He nodded once. It's gone. She left the room. That night, Stella sat in her room with her knees tucked to her chest, staring at the glow of her phone screen. She should have felt victorious. She didn't. She felt tired. Hollow. Because she knew what this meant. She was good. Good enough for someone to steal from. Good enough to build something real. And that knowledge both hurt and healed. Because now she wasn't just a girl in someone else's apartment. She was the one people underestimated. And underestimated girls? They had teeth. The app went dark. Jack kept his word. Within 24 hours, the site redirected to a dead page. The GitHub repo was deleted. The prototype vanished from the server. Stella watched it all from her laptop, heart clenched like a fist. She thought it would feel like justice. It didn't. It felt like cutting off a limb to escape a trap. She didn't speak to Jack for 2 days. Not out of spite. Out of space. She needed to sit in her own power for a while without having to share the room with him. In that silence, something began to shift. She wasn't broken anymore. She was building. Meanwhile, the city kept moving. Autumn tipped into early winter. The sky dimmed earlier, the wind turned sharp, and Christmas ads began appearing in subway cars and on the sides of buses. Stella began to walk a little differently, chin higher, eyes forward. She stopped dressing like she was trying to vanish. Started leaning into the sharpness in her face, the grace in her walk. She pulled her hair up, bought boots with hard soles, painted her nails black, not pink. People noticed. Tasha noticed first. It started with a repost. Stella had quietly uploaded one of her designs to an indie UX community on Instagram, a mock-up for a mental health app aimed at teen girls. She tagged it with basic keywords. Nothing flashy. It went semi-viral overnight. A design agency in Soho commented. Then a micro-influencer reposted it. Then it got picked up by a feminist tech blog. Suddenly, Stella's name was out there. Not Stella, the foster kid. Not Tasha's weird adopted sister. Just Stella Rae, designer, innovator, storyteller. She didn't hear from Tasha directly. Not at first. But a week later, she got a text. Unknown number. So now you're trying to become an influencer? Is that what this is? She stared at it, thumb hovering over reply. Then blocked the number. But Tasha wasn't done. One afternoon, Stella came back from class and found Carol in the apartment, sitting in the living room, cross legs, coach bag by her side. She hadn't seen Carol in 3 months. Jack stood nearby, arms folded, jaw tight. Carol looked up. We were just talking. Stella crossed the threshold, setting her bag down carefully. About what? About you. Jack started to speak, but Stella lifted a hand. She'd handle this. Carol stood. I just want to understand what's happening. You're making a lot of noise lately. Posting things. Speaking about foster care like it was some tragic little movie. That reflects on all of us. Stella laughed, quiet, sharp. You mean it reflects on you? You're not a victim, Stella. I took you in. You also kept me out. Out of your family. Out of your future. Out of anything that could have made me feel like a human being. Carol flinched. Stella stepped closer. You think silence protects reputation. But silence is what keeps people like me from getting free. Jack looked at her then, not with guilt or pity, but awe. Carol adjusted her purse strap. You're sounding very self-righteous for someone who's made a career out of someone else's couch. Stella smiled. Then I guess it's time I moved out. She did. The next morning. Not in anger. Not in fear. But in purpose. She packed her things into 2 suitcases and a canvas tote. Jack helped carry them. They didn't talk much. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't have to. Because she chose to leave. Not run. Not escape. Choose. 3 weeks later, she was on a podcast. A small one. Grassroots. Hosted by a pair of 20-something women of color talking about tech, identity, and survival. Someone had sent Stella's story in. They invited her to share. She sat in a studio apartment with foam on the walls and a mic in front of her face and said, They always tell girls like me to be grateful. But what they mean is, don't ask for more. I was invisible for most of my life. Then someone used me, and I realized, the minute I stopped being quiet, I stopped being powerless. That quote went viral, and suddenly everyone wanted to know who she was. Tasha posted a picture the next day. She stood outside a Tribeca cafe with her usual flawless face and smug lean. Caption. Proud of my sister for finding her voice #glowup #we did it first. Stella's name was tagged. Misspelled. She untagged herself. Then posted a photo of her own. A close-up of her hands on a sketchpad, wireframing an app for girls in group homes. No face. No filter. Just the raw beauty of work in progress. Caption. Not a project. Not a pet. Just a woman with an idea. Within 2 hours, it passed 10,000 likes. She had spent her whole life watching windows she couldn't reach. Now she was opening doors. And this time, no one could take the key from her. Winter thawed slowly over the city, but Stella didn't notice the cold anymore. She had other things to think about, deadlines, speaking invitations, pitch meetings, interview requests. Her name, once a shadow in someone else's household, now appeared on press releases, LinkedIn panels, medium think pieces. Stella Rae, UX designer, survivor, storyteller, founder. She didn't belong to anyone's narrative now. She was writing her own. The penthouse wasn't hers. Not yet. It belonged to a nonprofit incubator that offered 6-month residencies to young entrepreneurs in the city. The place was bright and minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a communal kitchen, and recycled art installations made by high school students. On her first night there, she stood barefoot on the polished floor, looking out at the skyline she used to trace from fire escapes. She had walked this city in secondhand shoes. Now, she was funding scholarship programs for girls just like her, launching a mobile platform that connected foster teens to mental health services, skill-building courses, and safe job leads. No ads, no gimmicks, just dignity in every tap. She named it Root, because that's what she had to grow in herself, alone in silence under concrete. She and Jack talked now. Not often, not romantically. They met for coffee once on neutral ground. A cafe in Brooklyn with low lighting and real cinnamon on the tables. He looked lighter, softer. He told her he'd started therapy, sold the brownstone, moved into a walk-up near his sister's place. "You were right," he said, stirring his espresso. Stella raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "That I was hiding. Not just from the world. From myself." She sipped her chai. "People who've been burned hide the brightest parts." He smiled at her. "You didn't." She tilted her head. "I did. But I found them again." The rooftop garden was her idea. It started as a joke, a sketch in her notebook titled "Things I'll Build When I'm CEO." But then the incubator's director saw the sketch and said, "Why not?" So they did, with recycled planters, fairy lights, and mismatched chairs found on Craigslist. She and a dozen other residents planted tomatoes, basil, mint, even a lemon tree that probably wouldn't survive the first frost. But it didn't matter. The point wasn't to grow fruit. The point was to belong. On the final day of her residency, Stella threw a party on that rooftop. Not a gala, not a networking event. A celebration. No guest list. No PR. Just her people. Girls from the group home where she now taught workshops. Her podcast hosts. The coder she hired straight out of community college. The woman from the shelter who helped her design Root's trauma-informed intake form. Jack came too late in a hoodie with a carton of vegan cupcakes under one arm. Carol didn't show. Tasha posted a passive-aggressive story that said some of US didn't need trauma to succeed. Stella laughed. It didn't sting anymore. She stood by the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. Her city. Her story. Lights blinked like stars below, and for once, she didn't feel like she was reaching for them. She was among them. Equal. Present. Real. Someone clinked a glass nearby. Someone laughed too loudly. Someone played SZA from a Bluetooth speaker in the corner. She closed her eyes and breathed in deep. This time, when the world noticed her, it wasn't for being the poor girl who made it. It was because she made something the world needed, and she made it her way. And she wasn't done. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.